Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton, and today we're going to focus on safety, and it may not be the kind of safety you think. My guest is Irene Ferrainolo from the Health Department. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So this is tied to National Safety Month, but
Correct.
It's one of those things where you designate something and then that gives you an excuse and
Absolutely.
a reminder
Right.
to really focus on it.
Mm-hmm.
So safety, what does that mean exactly?
Well, safety means keeping yourself and your family away from an unintentional injury. That's pretty much what we think of when we talk about safety. And the public health is very concerned about safety because when there's unintentional injury, the consequences is usually poor health, if not death.
Right.
Just as an underlying, I usually reference CDC for any topic I'm on. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of safety information, but I highly recommend National Safety Council's website for very good and very up-to-date statistics about injuries nationally and locally.
Now, I guess when I think injury, I think of workplace injuries or
Right.
things like that.
Right.
But we're really talking about broader for the public.
Exactly. Like, for instance, the number one cause of unintentional death in the United States right now is poisoning, which in the last 3 or 4 years has pulled ahead of traffic and crashes.
Holy cow! How can that? Like little kids getting into poisons.
That's what we always think of, and Mr. Yuck and the sticker. I mean, that was our focus for a long, long time. But unfortunately, in the 20s, so since the turn of the century, this new century, there has been a really incredible increase in the misuse of opioids and some over-the-counter drugs.
Okay.
Pain medications that are given for legitimate reasons are then used as directed, or maybe not as directed, but unknowingly or without the intention of becoming addicted, a person does become addicted. The other thing about pain medications that are prescribed, I don't know about you, but I have more than once been prescribed a pain medicine. I might take 1 or 2, but I don't finish the prescription, so there's still a few pills or maybe 5, 6, 7 pills left. And so instead of disposing of them, they stick around. And what's happening is that particularly young teens are finding those pills, not trying to become addicted, not trying to use drugs illicitly, but their pain, they have a sports injury, something, and so they're self-medicating, like, oh, what do we have in here in the medicine cabinet?
Gotcha.
So one of the big preventive measures people can take is not to keep medicine in the medicine cabinet. That is, the medicine should be stored. Usually that's a very warm place too, so that's not temperature-wise a good place, period. But back on safety, they should always be, if they're prescribed, be locked up or very safely stowed somewhere out of sight, not just on the kitchen counter. Maybe if you live alone, you think there's less of a risk, but certainly if you have other people coming into the house, or
that's
you have
what I was
young
going to say.
children.
People might have people might have grandchildren coming through, or whatever.
Right.
So what kind of drugs are we talking about? So like after surgery, like my kid had his wisdom teeth out, had 1 or 2 left over, whatever it was, the oxy something, some kind of major painkiller.
Yes, right.
Which is needed after surgery.
Oh, absolutely.
But you're right. You're supposed to wean yourself off.
Right, and what is happening nationwide is across all ages, but particularly in young adults and teens, it's truly a well-intentioned self-medication. Again, we're not talking about trying to get away with something. They have bought into the idea that if you've got a pain, there's got to be a pill for it.
Yeah, I don't want to suffer.
And Tylenol's not working. I think Mom has something in here better from her last dental appointment. So that's what happens.
That, and I think, they've changed the guidelines on the prescription and how you should do this. So it should be, people should only be getting a 5 or 7 day prescription, and it wouldn't be renewable, and it's not for chronic pain because people do. I mean, there's a huge amount of addiction.
Right. And I'm sure people have noticed, if you have too, that when you go into the drugstore now, there's even some over-the-counter medications that are controlled. They're locked. A lot of the some of the cold medicines, because of the codeine, it's locked up because it's not. And you can ask them to unlock it and buy some, but there is a deter. It's to try to deter someone from buying it.
Buying a lot for it.
Buying a lot, or buying it when they really don't need it, or walking away with it. I mean, it's there.
Yeah, and I think especially with over-the-counter medications, we all think, oh, it's safe.
Right.
If they sell it to me over the counter, it's safe. And if I need a little bit more, it's not working enough or whatever.
Yeah, and a lot of times with over-the-counter and even with prescription medicines, people really don't take the time to read that insert.
Oh, especially if you're feeling bad, you're in pain. Like, I'm going to read pages and pages of little print.
Right, and what's really important, well, everything on that sheet is important, but it's really imperative that you check interactions, because you may be taking something already appropriately that isn't going to mix well with that. And we're talking even about over-the-counter. It might say don't use if you're on this or you're taking this, or sometimes people double dose themselves. They don't realize that there's codeine in this and there's codeine in this, and now you have overdosed yourself.
Or even Tylenol might be in the prescription and they're still taking it, or whatever, multiple of those.
Exactly.
Okay.
Before we leave poisoning, the other new element that's contributing not nearly as much as what we were just talking about is death and injury caused by button batteries. The little batteries that run your phone.
Yeah, the Fitbit or the phone or the watch or the hearing aid or all those little batteries.
Because that's easily ingested and by little children. I mean, most of the injuries here have been with young children under the age of 3. And a lot of times, if it's ingested, it just passes out.
Right.
But sometimes it can get hung up.
If it gets stuck somewhere.
And it begins to disintegrate. And then what you're getting is actually some burning in wherever that's lodged, like esophageal. So it can cause both injury, but there are now thousands of cases of deaths attributed to button batteries. So besides all the things we're used to worrying about, like household cleaning products and gardening, fertilizer type things that need to be kept away and locked up and out of the reach of children, is also button batteries. It's like, really?
We get better, and then they throw new things at us.
Yes, and in fact, the one case study I was reading, the little guy who ended up passing away because of it, had taken the button battery out of a portable Yahtzee game.
Oh my gosh, there are a lot of those in those little games
and
now.
I mean, you always see kids playing with their parents' phone. I mean, that's how you keep them quiet while you're in the waiting room. But again, it's not the number one threat, but that is also added to and one I never would have thought about if I hadn't been reading up for this session. What we're saying that poisoning took the place of traffic safety. Traffic safety is such a big issue. I'll just remind everybody to buckle up. But we might need to do a whole session on that. But
buckle up and pay attention to where you cross. Like, I noticed people are in such a hurry or unwilling to take a few extra steps to get to that red light, to get to the corner, to cross where you should and where the cars would be stopped.
And here was
unfortunately we've seen a little too much of that.
Yeah, and here was a sobering statistic. My child is now 31, so I'm past this age. But slightly over 50% of all teenagers will be involved in a traffic accident before they're 18. Now, it can be like the one I had at 16 when I tried to park and hit the hydrant. Now, why was I trying to park beside the hydrant anyway? So they're usually thankfully not fatal.
Yes, I had a fence post, I think was my first accident.
My sister pulled out a piece of the garage, surround. Yeah, we all did something like that as teens. So there's been a lot of emphasis lately on teens and texting while driving, but just the inexperience of teen drivers is usually what contributes to that.
Yes, and I know the state actually limits now how many other kids can be, all those other influencing factors, but it is very, they think, oh, I'm at a stoplight, I can text, and then the light changes, and oh, I'm not done, or I'm just going to read it. You can't do that.
Right.
You can't even. You shouldn't even do hands-free or listen to stuff.
I know.
Really,
No.
It's too easy to be distracted.
Right. And I understand. And one of the ads right now, and I can't, even if I could remember the product, I wouldn't say. But they're developing a car. It won't start if I've never. It's something. If something's not turned off, if everything's not turned off, the car won't start. So it just reminded me. I'm old enough to remember there were cars that if you didn't buckle up, you couldn't start the car. Of course, all we did was buckle it behind. Not me.
Us. Yes,
not me, Mom and Dad. I never did.
No. Well, this is interesting because when I think of safety, I'll be honest, I think little kids. I think we have to protect our little kids. And a lot of what you're telling me is it's our teens.
Right.
Our teens and our young adults.
Yes. But to move to hold another age group, because the number three cause of fatalities in terms of unintentional injury are falls.
Yes.
And that
older population especially.
Falls, yes, on our older population. Something that I read that I don't think people often think about is the connection, or I didn't, the connection between falls of older folks and eyesight. That because a lot of, as we age, we do develop, many of us develop poor eyesight but don't go often enough. Like you got your glasses, when you were 61, you got your glasses, but now you're 70 and your eyes may have, you may need a totally new prescription. So the problems with eyesight is a big contributor to falls. And then there's the ones we're more familiar with, like rugs that aren't tied down or aren't adhesive. The bathroom, most dangerous place in the house is the bathroom. So
you're scaring me, but that is good. Have your grab bars, have those things in place. Don't leave your kids unattended, back to the little kids. But again, I think we've had a lot of campaigns that have focused on the little kids, and now we need to talk about some of the other dangers.
Number one bathroom with a towel rack is not a grab bar.
No, I've installed them. They have screws that are teeny tiny, and I know they'll pull right out, especially, and we have plaster, but especially for people who have wallboard. They're not anchored. They're not anchored to, anything that's going to hold you up.
And if someone is in a home that has a stairway, as you grow older, there really is recommended that if it doesn't have a railing on each side, that you add a railing. So if you have a lovely banister.
Yes, I have a railing on one side of my staircase.
Well, you're not elderly.
Well, thank you. I hope I get there,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
alternative is worse,
that's the whole purpose of Safety Month, is to make sure we all get to grow old.
And then we don't fall.
Right, and when we don't fall. And of course, as we get closer to warmer weather, we walk right into the fourth leading cause of injury, which is drowning. And it's the fourth leading cause apart from boating accidents.
Oh, wow.
So,
and here, it must be a higher risk here because there's water everywhere. There's creeks, there's rivers, there's the bay, there's all kinds of stuff.
Right, and
retaining ponds are a whole new one.
I know, and of course pools, and we have the longer your summer or your swimming period is, the more you always measure risk by how long you're exposed to the risk, and we get to go to the pool pretty much earlier than I did when I lived in the north. And the pool for young children, particularly the pool and the bathtub, are the places where fatal injuries will most often occur. Unattended bathtub play is not recommended, and because a lot of because it doesn't take any amount of water, a great amount of water. All a child needs to do is to be face down in the water for not a very long period of time, and it can lead to a drowning death. And of course, again, especially in this area, and especially the folks in our health department who inspect pools and do that type of thing. Fencing is critical. More and more people are installing a buzzer on the gate of the fence.
I have heard that.
So that if your child is outside and it's locked, but they're clever little buggers, so they're going to figure. It's not going to take them long to figure out how to unlock that.
Right.
Or
if another kid
or
tries
another
to come
kid
in,
or a neighbor or teens on the weekend having a party, but the buzzer will go off and alert you to the fact that the gate is open or it's been left open, but that it's been breached. So I think that's an excellent idea.
So technology can really help
absolutely,
us
absolutely.
be a
And I would suspect that could all be hooked up to your home monitoring system too. I'm sure that I do not have a pool, so
nor do I.
So I don't know. So certainly that in the summer season or in the swimming season is a very important safety issue to keep in mind. But the bathtub and bathing for your children, of course, is all year.
Okay, so those are the top 4.
Those are the top 4. Number 5, number 5 is choking, and that. For young people, it's usually they're choking on something that wasn't meant to be food.
Right, that they shouldn't have eaten, right.
And for older adults or or not just older adults, but for adults, it usually is a food object.
An accident, right.
And it occurs much more often if alcohol is also involved. And it doesn't mean that you've overindulged. It just means that you're more relaxed, you may not be as attentive, there might be just more confusion going on. And you might be in the middle of a party. But for adults, it's almost always food, and for young children, it's and that's why that on everything it says not safe for children under 3.
They mean that.
They do mean that, and it's surprising how small, or actually how large something can be. We do have something at the health department we've used for playground inspections that, if you have something and it passes through that too.
I've seen those. Yeah, that's really helpful.
Yeah, and you can, if someone really is concerned about that, you can buy those too at hardware stores and places. But so those are the top 5.
Okay, and we're going to ask people to be alert for that, especially during National Safety Month, but really all the time.
All year round.
This is the time we bring it to you, but we want you to be aware all the time. And Irene, I'm just going to we're going to recap real quick.
Okay.
These are the top 5 things that cause accidental injuries and death.
Poisoning.
Which can also include overdosing on prescribed medications or over the counter.
Right. Traffic crashes. Usually, and then we talked about inexperienced driving and
but buckle up. At least that doesn't help you not have a crash, but it helps you survive one.
It helps you survive one. Same with the child safety seat. Those 2 things are critical. So then it's traffic safety. Oh dear.
Well, maybe they're not in order.
Talked my way right out of it. Drowning. Choking.
Falls.
Choking was was number 3. Yes, falls was number 3, and most of those, the burden of that is mostly borne by our elderly population.
Okay, so whatever age you are, there's a safety tip in here for you, and we want you to follow it and be aware of the risks. Thank you for watching.